Speak loudly.
My question is, as we can see, rock music is a strong cultural phenomenon, and it was strong. But what about now, in present? Is something similar? Because I don't believe that it works in present time the same as it is seen in film.
Well, I gave one example of how the music is influencing greatly in the Muslim world. I will also come back to this part of the world. You may remember when the Orange Revolution happened in the Ukraine, just a decade ago. All of the major Ukrainian rock artists were at every rally, political campaign, and they performed, and they contributed in the movement because democracy was so important to them. 2 days after this occurred, the Deputy Defense Minister of Russia called in the 25 most popular Russian rock artists into the Kremlin, and he warned them that they should not consider or think about participating in politics like the musicians in Ukraine, and he told them all their careers would end if that happened. There was one of the frequent Russian speakers, Russian artists. He had short gray hair and a short beard, spoke English quite well. His name is Andrei Makarevich. He started a group called Time Machine, and they were the first group that started writing and singing and performing in Russian language. And that became very dangerous to the Kremlin because they realized they could have great influence. He is as famous in Russia as Paul McCartney is in England. And when the Russians invaded Ukraine, there were 25,000 brave Russian souls who marched down the main street in Moscow protesting the invasion. He was at the front of the march. And 2 days later in Parliament, he was stripped of all of his honors. His records were no longer on the radio. They called him a traitor, and they didn't arrest him. They realized he is so famous that if they arrested him, Pussy Riot, nobody knew who Pussy Riot was until they got arrested. But this man is so beloved, and they didn't arrest him, but they did everything they could to silence him. So it is still happening, but I think, as for an analogy, the power and influence that rock music had in the 50s, 60s, 70s may be equal to what the internet has today. The internet provides information to young people. And as hard as the Russians and the Chinese and other dictatorial regimes try to prevent young people from having access to the internet, they find a way. Just as these young kids figured out how to jerry-rig their shortwave radios, and they would find a way to hear rock music. And so I think the internet is a similar situation with young people.